We have something a little different here today because we have a personal friend of mine who I grew up with and absolutely adore. Grace, I'm thrilled to have you. As we begin, what is your Campus Chronicles story?
My Campus Chronicles story is a little different and different than I ever saw it happening when I was a senior in high school.
Mhm.
So I had left my senior year of high school and went for a 2-week trip to Los Angeles, California, and I was going to start my acting career. I had auditions and interviews and callbacks while I was in LA, and I was fully ready to jump into the film industry. And then I realized I was 19 years old. And I wanted to have life experience. I wanted to travel. I wanted to be able to grow up in acting and do more than play the funny best friend or the girl next door. So I said, what is something that would give me experience? And I joined the military.
I love this. That's
So,
an experience.
and it has been. I've been enlisted in the Air Force for 6 years now, 6 years completely in October. And that set up my path for all of the experience that I wanted, but it made my early 20s very interesting. I did not go down any path that any career counselor had within their realm of imagination. I paved my own way. And after I completed my initial military training, I'm a member of the Air National Guard. So I did have the freedom to go to school as well. I was a 21-year-old freshman, so I felt out of place and had to make my own way, going to school during a global pandemic, being a super extroverted person, but trying to make it work. And I ended up getting a job offer my freshman year of college. So I left college, went and worked full time for the Ohio National Guard in media and journalism. And now I'm at the end of my contract and on my way to be a 25-year-old college freshman.
I'm so proud of you. Okay, you guys. So you already see why I absolutely adore this woman because she tells stories with such beautiful heart and such beautiful description. And that's likely from our background in theater. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring Grace on today was she touched my heart with a speech that she did about dyslexia. I'm not as educated around dyslexia as I would like to be. Grace, let's dive into it. Why did you choose to discuss dyslexia and learning disabilities as your Miss Ohio talent?
I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was in the third grade. And I remember not understanding at all. And I kind of dive into this in my Miss Ohio talent that I couldn't comprehend what a diagnosis was at 9 years
Mhm.
old. I knew that I was different. I knew that I felt uncomfortable in the classroom. But when somebody came to me with dyslexia, you're just putting a label on it, but it didn't mean anything to me at that
And
young
that's so
age.
painful to be labeled.
Absolutely. And it was a double-edged sword because to receive a diagnosis is to receive a pathway to success. If I didn't know what it was that was making me different, I wouldn't have known what help to seek out. But then at the same time, there was no one else in my school that I knew of at the time that had dyslexia. So as far as I knew, I was the only person in the world with a brain that worked this way.
I can
So
imagine that was so isolating.
it was, and especially at 9 years old, and then going through school at 10, 11, 12, like those are core years where all you want to do is bond with your peers.
Yes. And you
And
feel
I
such an
felt
immense desire to fit in.
absolutely. So now, as an adult and living with learning disabilities my entire life, I will never outgrow them. I will always have a brain that works the way it does. It meant the world to me to go back and let students know that the way that their brain works is different, but it's perfect.
Mm.
And so dyslexia is the way that my brain processes information. And it's not slow, it's not backwards, it's not upside down, it's different. and to a cookie cutter school system that expects students to perform in a certain way, it was difficult.
Mhm.
So my brain stores its information differently and it also will read. So the way that I explain it is if I'm reading a page, my eyes are going to move faster than my brain will process the information. And that's where we get into some of the myths about dyslexia, that it's reading backwards or seeing letters switched. It's just that my brain is running a marathon to keep up with what my eyes are doing.
Wow. That's a beautiful way to explain it because it's so tangible. It's so visual.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I've been able to help a lot of students who are in that same space as I was at 9 years old, and they can understand running from gym class, but maybe you don't see where you're going. And they're like, wait, that's
Yes.
exactly how I feel. And I'm like, I know, like me too. Still to this day, I find myself having to reread paragraphs in books because I will read to get to the end of the page, but I wasn't reading for comprehension.
Going into being a 25-year-old university freshman, which is so courageous that I'm so proud of you. How do you think this information that you have now about the way that you process will inform how you study, how you treat yourself?
It has been such a period of grace to learn about my disability. And I'm continuously learning more about my disability every single year. And in high school, it was very, very difficult. By the time I got to college, when I did go to Baldwin Wallace University in Berea, Ohio, I was able to use accommodation. So I had teachers that we talked one on one about my disability, and we were able to formulate a plan with the school that worked best for me. So on some projects, I did get a little extra time. On some testing, I had extended time. I would have copies of notes from my lectures because it was hard for me I couldn't write and listen at the same time. Like you were either going to get written notes, but then I would go back and reference them and have no idea what they meant, or I could sit in class and absorb the information.
Mhm. And knowing that gives you such an upper hand or such an edge and how to support yourself. Because if you don't have the words to communicate what you need, you're not going to get that support that you're seeking. And that's so unfortunate, but true. And that you oftentimes do have to be your own self advocate. How did you learn how to self advocate? Because I know that can be uncomfortable to broach that for the first time, particularly because you were so young.
Mhm. I had an extreme advantage being as extroverted as I am. And I think I got a lot of that from growing up in theater, growing up on stage. And I've always loved talking.
She
Talking
does. She
is my
loves to
favorite
talk
hobby.
in a beautiful way.
But I was very lucky to have a mom who is an educator. And when I received my diagnosis, she knew that she was not going to be able to be in every classroom with me.
Mhm.
And it was very important to her that I was able to talk to my teachers. So even at 9 years old, I was going to my 504 and my IOP meetings and discussing with my teachers what I was feeling at 9. And that translated into having that skill set my entire life. In high school, I was going up to my teachers with my binder, carrying my 504 plan, opening up to section 3, paragraph A, and saying, due to the Americans with Disabilities Act, I need you to give me a copy of the notes. So it wasn't just knowing how I feel, it was knowing what I was entitled to.
That's a powerful point.
And
That's incredibly
it was
powerful.
incredible because I had some teachers. Now we think about what our educators are required to do in the classroom. They are wearing so many hats and carrying out so many different jobs just to teach you how to do math that it couldn't be their fault to not know how Grace Riegel's brain works. But for Grace Riegel to go in there and offer a kind but firm reminder on this is what I need to succeed, I have a lot of teachers that were able to then meet me where I am.
What does a kind but firm request sound like?
There was some balance in learning how to do this correctly, but there's a lot of times that I wanted to walk up to my teachers and be like, I'm so sorry, but I need to let you know that this just isn't working for me.
Oh,
That
starting with the "I'm so sorry" to bolster is such a uniquely feminine thing, isn't it?
I think it is.
It is.
It made me feel more comfortable because I'm going to a person who's in a place of power and a place of authority. And well, I don't want to be a burden.
Mm.
And then I remembered how much of a burden it was on my education to live without the accommodations I was owed. And I found a lot of power in walking up with the full knowledge of what I was owed and presenting that in a way that was, excuse me, ma'am, I know that this is how my accommodation should run in this classroom. I would really love to have a further conversation with you after class, but right now, this is what I need. Thank you. And that worked with a soft smile, with a firm tone, and with the knowledge to back what I was saying. That's how I got to a successful route in education.
Something is coming up for me. It's with late diagnosis, and we hear this a lot. So many people suspect that perhaps they were missed or they perhaps interpret the world or stimuli differently, but they're not formally diagnosed. If somebody suspects something, what is their first step?
So, my mother, and I'm so lucky to have the mom that I do in the situation that I was in, but she now owns her own business where she is a dyslexia screener and consultant. So, she has students that will come to her and she will screen them to see if they have dyslexia or
Mhm.
if they're within that realm. So ADHD runs right in line with dyslexia. A lot of times we see them coming together as best friends.
Yes,
Um,
it's like celiac disease and dairy allergy. They're all linked and all together.
yeah.
Yes, they are.
And it's interesting how like you don't get away with just one.
No, you
We're gonna
can
button
never have
system
just one.
this.
It's also like autoimmune diseases. They pair up.
Absolutely. So before my mom had the job that she had, I was the reason she discovered what dyslexia was. So, to speak to going undiagnosed, my mother went through all of education undiagnosed. And she then decided that that was going to be her career path because she didn't ever want a student to sit in her classroom and feel the way that she felt, not knowing what it was, not understanding fully why she felt alone, but knowing that she felt behind and no one was going to do that in her classroom. When I got into the third grade, my mom said, "Oh my gosh, I've seen this before. I lived this before. Why is this happening to my daughter too?" So then she started talking to pediatricians to say, this is where she's struggling. She's turning in all of her tests 20 minutes behind the other students. She's not totally understanding the books. And we were noticing that if you were to tell me a story, if Brooke and I were to have a conversation, I could fully comprehend and repeat back all of that. I could tell you every single thing that we talked about. If it was musical theater and I watched a show, I could tell you about the plot and the history of the characters and their character development, and I understood what was happening. If I read the script, no clue what this show is about. Like, I read all of the words from start to finish, but I maybe didn't collect much there.
It was like reading Greek.
Absolutely. It was words, and I knew what the words meant, but there wasn't that picture of reading. It's not as enjoyable. And I do enjoy reading, but it wasn't that experience of
Hmm.
like understanding the flow of the story because I was more worried about how the consonants work together to form the word than the definition of the word and how the word works with the other words in the sentence to create a picture.
And you can't be present and you can't have that mental
No.
picture to your point if that's your day to day experience. So if somebody is experiencing, like you said, turning test in late, if they're reading things, but it's not necessarily clicking in the way that other people describe, those are signs.
Absolutely. So it doesn't mean that if you're experiencing those things for sure, it is dyslexia. But those were a lot of the things that we were noticing when I was in third grade. And that's when we're, starting to have silent reading time. That's when we're starting to maybe do multiplication facts, starting to have work on your own in classroom homework assignments. And I always just felt 5 steps behind everybody. I would always look around the classroom and see people maybe 3 pages ahead of me, and I had still just opened the book.
Hmm. How has the public and the people that you've broached this topic with, what has the response been like?
It has been overwhelming.
Oh, I'm
And
so happy.
To be able to stand on the Miss Ohio stage and have people come up to me after the show and say, I have dyslexia. I was just diagnosed, and connect over that, because that's what I was missing as a young student, was somebody else telling me, wait, I also understand what you're going through. And throughout the years, as you know, other kids were getting diagnosed and I was placed into some like additional education, into some 504 classes. I had like started to connect with other students. I think it was Bella Thorne on Disney Channel released a commercial talking about her dyslexia, and I felt seen.
You felt
So to now
validated, I'm
serve.
sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I loved Bella Thorne. I loved Shake It Up. So that felt so like I'm not alone. And now to serve as that representative who turned a learning disability into a career in creative writing. It's a wonderful feeling.
How does your dyslexia contribute to your ability to tell stories beautifully, to tell stories creatively? How is it your edge, you may say?
I always say I am a wonderful storyteller and a very bad speller.
I love that.
And two things can exist at one time. I love formulating the story. I love painting the picture. That's the art form that has always spoken to me. But then when it's time to hit the paper, it's a battle to try and get it to look the way it looks in my brain. So I have learned that I just need to dive in, and I need to, I call it, I write ugly. I get the thoughts on the paper and I write.
I
And
love
everything is
that.
spelled wrong and everything is underlined in red. And there's sometimes that, Microsoft Word doesn't even know what I am trying to type, but I just get the story out. Then I can go back and edit. Then I can slow down and, maybe replace a few words, fine tune my paper. But that's how I get the story that I know I'm able to tell.
What a process and permission to give yourself the opportunity to do it in the way that works for you without judging yourself, without feeling shame, without feeling guilt.
Absolutely. Brooke, I love that.
Mm, that's
Allowing myself
so
the
much
permission.
permission. And it's so juicy because we don't give ourselves permission to see and be and do and feel the way that we need to feel because we feel that we're not going to be understood or that we might be judged, to your point. But just giving yourself the grace to say, this is how I have to do it for me, that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
It truly is. What are some of the other coping mechanisms or tools that you use to help ensure that you're able to tell stories, to show up the way that you want to show up, and yet use this as an opportunity for growth, not as a setback?
It has absolutely been an opportunity for growth. And if you would have told me as a young student that I would do anything involving writing, I wouldn't have believed you. But it is always where my passions have been. So, like you said, allowing myself the permission to write the way that I need to write. We have a very big rule in the office that I work in that my boss is not allowed to stand over my shoulder when I write. Because he'll do that and like want to collaborate and be like, what if we put this sentence here? And I'm like, you cannot look at all of the red lines on my paper. Like, let me get it all out and then we can collaborate. I make sure that I always, always, always record my interviews. And I've even been able to utilize technology and AI programs to create transcripts of the interviews that I write. So that way I can see it on paper and start to cut out the actual words in a document and place those quotes into my stories.
That's incredible. And it's a really good representative of I'm using this as a tool to assist myself. Oh, I'm loving what you're saying, Grace. Another question that's coming up for me as you're educating me in this realm where I'm a bit uneducated as well. As far as dyslexia and its portrayal in the media, because I know we both have a profound interest in media, what do you think popular culture gets wrong about the portrayal of dyslexia in film, TVs, media?
There are a lot of myths about dyslexia, and I talk about this all the time in my interviews or when I'm meeting with families or mentees that have just found out that they have dyslexia. And there's so much that exists, but there's reasons behind every myth, if that makes sense.
There's a
So, a
little
lot of
nugget of truth in them, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So with the processing time, like I said, my eyes are moving faster than my brain can process what's on the page. That's how we get the misconception that dyslexia is seeing things upside down or seeing things move around the page. And that's not true. It's my eyes moving around the page faster than my brain is following them. We also have a misconception that there are more males with dyslexia than there are females. So, a lot of times, females will go undiagnosed, and this is existent in multiple learning disabilities because of the way that we are likely to handle feeling different. So, more likely than not, again, this is a stereotype, so this isn't always how it plays out. But a young boy who feels different in class might take on the role of the class clown, might start acting up, I'm too cool for school, I'm not going to do my homework. And he gets a diagnosis because we can see something's wrong. He's compensating for
Because he
something.
made noise.
He made noise. And women are more likely to stay up until 3 a.m. and just get the assignment done, even if it hurts. We are more likely to study the entire weekend and not hang out with our friends just so nobody knows we're different. We're more likely to not ask questions, ask for extra time, ask for the notes, because I just don't want to be an inconvenience. And that was the biggest thing in being an advocate for me, especially for self advocacy, was that I need to teach young girls that it is okay to ask for what you need.
It does not make you wrong. It does not make you selfish. It does not make you bold. It does not make you problematic. That's a humongous story I carried. That if I were to say I needed this, that if I were to say this isn't okay with me, that made me a problem and somehow less worthy and somehow less lovable. And
Yes.
what we said earlier about saying sorry, that's another one I needed to bolster it, to feel like I wasn't problematic, to feel that I could still be lovable, that I could still be good. And the way that you're describing this makes tremendous sense about the presentation in males and in females. So, Grace, you're very smart. I have to ask you a challenging question.
Okay.
If you had to give, and I love this because you're going into your freshman year, 3 pieces of advice for university students, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
Number one, ask questions.
Listen to
Ask
Grace.
questions.
Yes.
Send the emails, follow up, find friends and ask them questions. That is my biggest thing in anywhere that you are in life, but especially college. Ask questions. My second piece of advice would be join communities. Find a club that is interesting to you. I joined a sorority. I am a sister of Alpha Gamma Delta. And that was a wonderful outlet for me to find other people on campus and connect with people. The beautiful thing about a sorority, I was able to connect with girls who had totally different interests, totally different majors, different life paths, and we were able to share so much. And then my third piece of advice is to be authentic. There were so many moments in my college career and in my career, my time as an adult, that there were certain ways I feel I needed to act in certain rooms, or there were certain ways I wanted to carry myself to be perceived a certain way. And the most important thing you can do is be you. Whether that's wearing your favorite outfit that somebody else might not like to your lecture, or doing your hair in a way that isn't popular on TikTok because it feels cute to you, you're going to thrive in your college years as you.
I put my hand over my heart because the third point touched me so deeply in terms of feeling the compulsive need to show up different based on who you were around and where you were. And if I could rewind my time and go back to university again, that is the biggest thing I would change. I would stop putting up with things that I was not okay with. I would say no more often. I would tell people when something was hurting me, and I would be authentic to my ethics, my morals, and my values.
Yes.
What are you most looking forward to as we start to wrap up here about going back as a 25-year-old freshman? What are you most excited for?
I am so excited for every aspect of furthering my education again. We don't talk about how hard college is for an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old. It is a big jump from living with your parents, from going to high school, from having everyone. I know that I grew up in a small town, so having everyone that I've known since preschool and then being in a totally new group of people. So I'm very excited to now be 25 years old, to have traveled the world, to have grown so much and been on military activations and really had a full career. I have a much better understanding of who I am, of how the world works, of what it is that I want to study. So props to every 18, 19-year-old that is jumping into college. You are doing hard things.
And props to everyone who's a non-traditional student too, who goes back and says, I studied something that wasn't right for me. I need to change my major,
Mhm.
whatever it is. To your point, you also have a much better indicator of the world that you actually want to see and the world that you want to live in. Because we can talk all day long about being the change, but until we know how the world works, we don't know how to show up for ourselves and we don't know how to show up for other people.
Absolutely.
If somebody wants to learn more about your advocacy, where do they go?
So I am extremely active on social media. You can follow me at grace.riegel. I also have a pageant account and it's linked within grace.riegel, but I talk a lot about my community service and my work with spelling out dyslexia, my community service initiative.
Grace, it has been so amazing to have you on the podcast today. It's a topic that I needed further education on, and I'm just so delighted that you put this resource and this information into the hands of people who need it. Thank you for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your personal stories, and for being so vulnerable with us.
So thank you so much, Brooke, for having me. I had a great time talking with you.
And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on another episode of the Campus Chronicles podcast. So if today's episode gave you life, perspective, or just a much needed moment to breathe in a busy world, I don't want you to keep it to yourself. Share it, tag us, please send it to a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're not on our newsletter yet, what are you doing? Go to campuschroniclespod.com and join the crew. We have all the behind the scenes things, unfiltered thoughts from me and the team, bonus resources, and insider only invites to events, giveaways, and things that we really don't post anywhere else. I promise I'm not going to spam you. It's just the good stuff straight to your inbox. Being in university is wild enough. You don't need to miss out on what matters. Sign up now and let's make this next semester the one that you stop surviving and start thriving. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, keep writing your own chapter. This is Campus Chronicles.